The question seemed harmless, almost casual, but it landed like a crack through thin ice. On a pale December morning, with daylight stretching quietly across the street, the neighbor asked, "What's your Christmas wish?" And the single father froze, his breath caught somewhere between hope and truth. He stood on his front steps, jacket too thin for winter, eyes shadowed by sleepless nights, and in that stillness, it felt as though the entire season waited for his answer. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of compassion, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Dreams Journal, because stories like this remind us that even the smallest kindness can change a life. Daniel Mercer was 36 years old, but grief and responsibility had carved years into his face. Daytime was when his struggles were most visible, when the world was awake and moving forward while he tried desperately to keep up. Since losing his wife 3 years earlier, Daniel had lived life in careful fragments, structured around survival rather than dreams. He worked long day shifts at a distribution warehouse, returning home before sunset only to collapse into routines that left little room for rest. His 8-year-old son, Noah, was his anchor and his fear all at once. Every smile from the boy carried joy, but also pressure, the pressure to never fail. Across the narrow driveway lived Marianne Keller, a woman in her early 60s whose days were quiet and observant. She had spent her career as a school counselor and her retirement noticing things others overlooked. She noticed how Daniel's house never had decorations, how Noah's shoes were always clean but worn, and how Daniel smiled politely without ever relaxing. In daylight, when shadows were honest, she could see the exhaustion he tried to hide. When Marianne finally asked about his Christmas wish, she expected a simple answer, maybe a better job, maybe a peaceful holiday. What Daniel gave her instead unsettled her deeply. He spoke about wishing his son wouldn't remember how tired his father always was. He spoke about fearing the day Noah might stop asking for help because he didn't want to be a burden. He spoke about wanting time, just time to breathe, to heal, to be present. His words were calm, but beneath them was a quiet desperation that made Marianne's chest ache. From that day forward, suspense threaded through Daniel's life in ways he didn't yet recognize. The warehouse announced potential layoffs just a week before Christmas, and Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. Each daylight hour stretched longer, every sound at work carrying dread. At home, he tried to shield Noah from the tension, but children sense fear even when it's unspoken. Daniel lay awake during the afternoons he should have been resting, imagining bills piling up, imagining Noah waking on Christmas morning to disappointment. Meanwhile, Marianne was doing something Daniel never saw. She began making calls during the day, carefully, quietly. She spoke to former colleagues, community organizers, and a local literacy center. She never mentioned Daniel's hardships directly. Instead, she spoke of a devoted father, a bright child, and a family on the edge of breaking under weight no one should carry alone. Still, nothing was certain. Days passed with no answers, and Marianne herself began to worry she had hoped too much. As Christmas Eve approached, the suspense tightened painfully. Daniel received notice that his hours would be cut starting January. The news came in broad daylight, under fluorescent lights, and he felt something inside him go numb. He walked home slowly that afternoon, rehearsing how to explain uncertainty to a child who trusted him completely. That evening, he wrapped Noah's single gift, his hands shaking as he wondered if love could compensate for everything he lacked. Just before sunset on Christmas Eve, Marianne knocked on his door. The daylight cast long shadows across the floor as she stepped inside, carrying no grand announcement, only a quiet certainty. What followed didn't feel like rescue, it felt like relief finally exhaling. Through connections she had fought hard to secure, Daniel was offered a daytime position at a nearby educational supply center, one that promised steadier hours and room to grow. Noah had also been accepted into a free enrichment program that met after school, a place filled with books, mentors, and possibility. Before the ending, please comment below what Christmas wishes mean to you, because your words might reach someone who feels unheard this season. Christmas morning arrived gently, sunlight filling the small living room where a modest tree now stood. There was no excess, no spectacle, but there was laughter that felt earned. Daniel watched Noah open his gift, watched joy unfold without expectation, and felt something he hadn't felt in years: safety. Not certainty, but enough hope to keep going. In the weeks that followed, life didn't magically become easy, but it became lighter. Daniel stood taller in the daytime, no longer bracing for collapse. Marianne remained a steady presence, not as a savior, but as proof that people notice, even when you think no one does. And Noah, unaware of how close his world had come to cracking, simply remembered a Christmas filled with warmth. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and engage with this video. Your support keeps these stories alive, and somewhere, someone carrying a quiet burden may feel less alone because you listened.